twisting through 7 suns of gold, and the gypsy was insisting that his story.
So welcome to Dr. Robb Kelly to the Soberful podcast. It's nice to finally meet you.
You too, Veronica. Good to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's because I've seen you pop up, and I know we've both had to reschedule this a couple of times, and I've seen your stuff on social media and stuff. And then I didn't realize until you got into the call, you're also a Brit that lives in America.
I know, it's awesome. There are a few of us around, but it's really nice to meet another Brit, I must admit. Every time I talk through, I go to the off license. They got what? Oh, sorry, liquor store. Also little stuff like that. So.
And did you marry an American, or did you?
I did. I married a girl from Dallas. Well, she was born in Austin, to be honest.
Yeah, I married an American as well. So Dr. Robb has overcome homelessness, alcohol dependency, trauma, PTSD, and a whirlwind events to be the Gordon Ramsay of the addiction treatment world. Before Robb succumbed to addiction and mental health issues, he played bass guitar at Abbey Studios with Queen, David Bowie, and Elton John. You're one of those people who's just had like 15 lives in one lifetime. You've been homeless, you have a PhD from Oxford University, and you're a doctor of psychology, correct?
Correct, yes.
Wow. So that is quite a story.
Yes.
So tell us, when did your addiction take off and what happened?
Well, I was born into a musical family, so I got my first guitar at the age of 3 or 4. I actually played on stage at the age of 9 with my uncle and auntie in a trio band, and we'd go around the clubs and pubs. Took my first drink at the age of 9, and it kind of changed my own perspective on life. And I knew I found something that was going to be my friend for the rest of my life. It gave me courage, it gave me confidence. So yeah, I remember the exact spot and the exact time that I took that drink. And that kicked off my alcoholism, because you can't drink yourself into becoming an alcoholic. It's hereditary. It's passed down from generation to generation. So I was born this way. I have a biochemical reaction to the ethanol in alcohol. That's what most people don't know. And, it served me well for a long time, alcohol. And then it turned on me. And there was the homelessness.
Like tell me about that. Go back to that. You have a biochemical reaction to ethanol. Explain that if you could.
Well, most people think it's alcohol. Most people even go further and go, oh, I'm allergic to alcohol, which is awesome. I get it. But the actual fact is that I'm allergic to the ethanol. So it's actually a chemical reaction in my brain from my predisposition. That means that anytime someone's hereditary born as an alcoholic gene, when they take alcohol, they can't stop. And over a period of time, it gets worse and worse, a progressive illness. But we're actually allergic to that ethanol. Just like someone's allergic to cheese. When they eat it, they get sick. When I drink alcohol, I get sick. My mental brain is going, yes, 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 we can drink it. And as soon as I do, the allergy sets up inside me, which makes me very sick. If I could stop, I never could.
And so you grew up with this was hereditary, but you also, drinking was very normalized, and you were hanging out in drinking places like that was just normal.
Yeah, I mean, you know what it's like, Veronica, back home in England. It's just like, if you didn't drink, it was like, why? What's going on? And,
everyone drinks. Yeah.
I grew up in a lower working class family, so it was just everybody drank. I mean, I don't know anybody that didn't drink, which was crazy. My mum and dad had a bar in the house, in a council house, little entry at the back. They built a bar there. It's like it's so natural to drink. It was just crazy.
Yeah, it is. So you were off and running. What was school, all that like?
School was good. I was never a genius, but I was good. I was good at music and I was a bit good at sports. So it was good. I was drinking every weekend when I was getting through secondary school or high school, guys. And, it just became normal. It was brilliant. I loved it. I absolutely loved it at the time. And, it served me well. But I always had this thing in the bottom of my brain that says, I can do better than this. That was the problem with me, is I was embarrassed where I lived and I wanted to do better. And that's kind of part of the addiction as well. That's the disease, We always want to better ourselves. We have an amazing brain. It's different to the normal brain, the addicted personality and brain. And I just knew I was destined for better things. But obviously it didn't happen to me at first. And I thought I was going to die on the streets.
But you got into Oxford University.
Yes, I got into Oxford University through the back door. A friend of a friend was a Freemason. And by the time I was 15, I was asked by a friend of a friend, because I played the organ, to join the local Freemason. So I went for the interview, got in, no black balls. And I was playing the organ for them. So I was in much earlier than I should have been, but they not had an organist for like 7, 8 years. They were all getting on in age and they couldn't recruit one. So through a friend of a friend, through the Freemasons, I went on get killed for this. I got into Oxford University and I had to pay myself through. So everything seemed to be falling into place. That was the time, about 14, I joined session musician at Strawberry Studios, which is owned by 10cc in Stockport, Manchester. And then I went down to Oxford and I started at Abbey Road just before I started at Oxford. So everything worked out that I could pay for myself to get through. But in a normal world, people like me don't go to Oxford. You kidding me? From a council
Yeah.
estate, give me a break.
Yeah. How was that? How were you treated?
I had the imposter syndrome.
Right.
I always remember sitting down for lunch in full uniform. And for the first time in my life, I saw 4 knives on one side and 4 forks of different sides on the other, and 2 spoons at the top. And I was horrified that I didn't know what to do.
Yeah,
So the
really.
imposter syndrome has been with me ever since that. It's still with me today. It's
Wow.
still there. And I've worked on it and I've worked on the trauma with other people. And it just, I don't know, it just seems crazy. Scarred for life, I reckon.
Yeah, it is a real. I mean, just for our American listeners, Oxford University, Oxford and Cambridge. My husband went to Cambridge, by the way. Um, are the two premier institutions in the UK. And they're also, I mean, I know Cambridge, it goes back 800 years. I mean,
Mm,
it's a long, usually the upper class. And I know that they've been trying to do a lot more to make that more equitable,
mm.
but there's no getting away from Boris Johnson, David Cameron, et cetera, people who went to Eton, the private school that the royal family tend to go to, naturally all went to Oxford. And it would be a massive culture shock for
Yes.
a working class lad from the north of
Yes.
England to go. I mean, it's like, I don't know, it's like growing up in uh, the south side of Chicago and going
Yep.
to Harvard kind of
Yes.
thing, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And it was nerve wracking, but these opportunities seem to just come and present themselves to me. So in my thought pattern, I'm like, everything's going to fall into place here. I'm going to get away from the council estates. I'm going to get away
Yeah.
from all that stuff. And then the alcoholism got me.
Yeah. You would think, you'd think, oh, his made, getting into
Yes.
Oxford. Then how did, I mean, you ended up homeless. How, can you tell us that, how that happened?
Well, I finished school and I was joined the police force because most of the guys in my lodge were police officers. So again, I was led, let's do this. You can
Yeah.
do this. You're awesome. So I got through. Um, and I lasted only about 6 months and they fired me for being drunk on duty. And one of the sergeants called me an alcoholic, which was furious at. I mean, fire me, I don't mind, but calling me an alcoholic, are you kidding
Mm.
me? So I did that. And then I joined a telecom company. I worked there for 2 months and thought, I can do this myself. So I did, building mobile sites for the Army and Navy, and obviously later on for cell phones when they came out. Got married. My wife knew I drank a lot. Um, but I wanted to stop. But I found out I couldn't. But I didn't have a problem. I want to specify that. No alcoholic thinks they have a problem. But I got married, didn't do it. Got my first child, came along. Well, that was it. I was adamant. In fact, I took a Bible to the hospital when my baby was born. Mom held first, and I held my baby. I passed it back to mom. I got my Bible out. I put my hand on the Bible, and I swore to my newborn girl, my wife, and to me, myself, that I would never drink alcohol ever again. 4 hours later, I was drunk. So that continued. Got the second baby. Oh, that was it now. Veronica, that was it. Two
Mhm.
Bibles to the church, to the hospital with me. And in front of two doctors, I swore to my wife, two babies, the doctors, to God, and myself that I would never drink alcohol again. And 3 hours later, I was drunk. So there was a problem that I didn't see that just multiplied like crazy.
And so what were you doing? You'd left the police force. How?
Oh, telecoms. I was doing in
Oh,
telecoms. Well, before it was telecoms, it was site building for a contract of the Army and Navy. And then
right.
later on, it obviously turned into cell phone towers way before the phones came out. The network had to be built. And we kind of did that. So I was back up to, the big house on the hill, the Porsches, the Bentleys, everything was going great. But my drinking was out of control, but I didn't see it. And there was some bad stuff, Veronica, that happened in that house, but it didn't stop me drinking.
What did stop you drinking? I mean, you were homeless eventually, right?
I lost everything, stabbed my wife 3 times one night because she wouldn't let me finish my vodka. I left my kids in dangerous places. And eventually she had enough and left. I got my attorney to get my children back ASAP. The next day, he went to court. He turned up at my house with my 2 children. I put him in front of the TV and I went into the kitchen all proud of myself. And I thought to myself, wouldn't it be great just to have one beer to celebrate my children coming back? 3 days later, when the police kicked the door down because my children had been fed for 2 days and they'd not been changed diapers or nappies for 2 days,
Oh.
they served me with unfit father papers. As they took my children away, the police gave my youngest one to the mother-in-law, and my eldest one, that was 3 at the time, held hands with mom. And it was a sad sight as they started walking. And my eldest girl, who was, like I said, 3, Charlie, she turned around and she said 3 things to me. She said, Daddy, please don't go. Kids are so resilient after everything it's put them through. And then halfway down the pathway, away from the house, she turned around again and said, Daddy, please get better. And as they got to the big black gate, they opened one part of the gate and she turned around one more final time and says, Daddy, please stop drinking. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it for them. I couldn't do it for me. And about 3, 4, 5, 6 months later, the house had gone, the kids had gone, the wife had gone, the cars had gone, the business had gone, the holiday homes had gone. I'd bounced from there to my parents. My parents saw the severity of the disease. They threw me out after 3 days. I went to friends, I went to acquaintances, and I was sat on the streets for the first night. It was pouring down with rain. I was cold in the centre of Manchester, Piccadilly Gardens. And I thought to myself, where the hell did that all just go wrong? Because I didn't have a drinking problem, still the mindset. 14 months on the streets of absolute stuff I can't mention here that I had to do to survive and what I did to survive. I had a huge spiritual awakening one night, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, Monday morning. And that's the reason I got off the streets. I remember falling
What
down.
happened? What was your spiritual awakening?
Well, I didn't believe in God because look at me, what he'd done. I hated myself and everybody around me. I was a very angry person. I had to physically fist fight every day to stay alive. And I dropped down to my hands and knees once in the back end of Manchester. It was like all the factories and businesses are. There was nobody there, no cars, nothing. There was just nobody there, especially at that time. I dropped down to my hands and knees. I started crying from my stomach like a baby. And I remember this very, very clear. It was pouring down. On my hands and knees. I had my head down. I was crying, and I could feel the rain hitting me on the back of the head, coming round my face, mixing with my tears, and making a purple kind of color on the cobbles. And I just looked up to the sky. I was done, Veronica. I looked to the sky and I just said, if there's a God up there, I can't do this on my own anymore. 30 seconds later, a guy walked around the corner. He had a small Bible in his hand. He found out he'd missed the last bus home from Bible study. So he'd walked like an hour or 2 hours. He head past me. He said, do you want help? I said, yes. He took me back to his house, and right there is where it all started, the comeback.
Up until that point, what did you think the problem was? You didn't think it was alcohol? Was it just run of bad luck? Just the universe conspiring against you?
Luck. Yeah. And the reason I didn't mention, the reason I was crying is not because I'd lost my children or my money or my wife or my cars. The reason I was crying, Veronica, is I realized I couldn't stop drinking. That's when it hit me. So the rest was the thing, well, just going through some bad luck, it'll be okay. And it was never okay. I tried to commit suicide 5 times, and on 2 occasions, it worked. My heart actually stopped, and they brought me back to life. The EMTs brought me back to life, and I hated them guys for that because I didn't want to live. I just wanted to die. And I tried several stuff. I remember going to my mum's, sneaking in my mum's when they were out because they wouldn't let me in their house. I stole some alcohol, and I went to the bathroom cabinet, and I got a bunch of pills in this prescription with my mum's name on it. And when I got back to the streets, I drank the alcohol, and then I downed about 30 of these pills, and they were laxatives. I thought they were like painkillers or something. So it's like I couldn't kill myself. I know it sounds stupid, but I
Mm.
couldn't. On top of buildings in Piccadilly Gardens, 25 floors up with a bottle of vodka in my hand, stood on the edge. I
Mm-hmm.
looked down to my death and I drank the bottle that quickly because that's what I wanted to do. And I fell backwards, not forward. It's just full of crazy things like that.
And how old were you at this point when this happened?
I want to say about 22, 23, 24, 25. I really haven't been able to manage the time. My time frames are off because of the alcohol abuse.
Mm.
It's a myth that you can kill brain cells when you drink. That's a myth, but they do get unused and go like a gray area where you can't recall time or places. I suffer from that today.
So how did you get sober? What tools did you use? Did you do a program? Did you go to rehab?
Well, this is where it really gets interesting. So this guy, Derek, who was in his house, said, "You can stay here for as long as you want, Rob, but you need to come to AA meetings with me." And I've been there. I hated them meeting, but I went because it was a dry bed, for the nights that
Mm.
I went. The first night we went was the next day that he'd found me. And I sat in the meeting and it was horrible. And I was hating it. And all of a sudden, this guy shared, he said, "My name's John and I'm a recovered alcoholic." And it grabbed my attention because, you can't recover from alcoholism. Silly. You're always recovering from alcoholism. So after the meeting, he shared from the big book, which is the 12-step book. And after the meeting, I went over to him. And all this makes sense now, but didn't at the time, Veronica. I need to specify that. And I asked him to
Mm.
sponsor me. And he said no. So just before my heart hit the ground, he said, "But I will be a spiritual advisor for a period of 12 weeks. I'm like, okay, that's not weird. So he asked me to come to his apartment and give me the address. He said, "Bring a book, the big book, and a dictionary." And I said, "I don't need a dictionary." I went to Oxford and he looked straight in the eye and he said, "Bring a dictionary." Okay. And for 12 weeks on a Wednesday, I left my house or Derek's house at 7 p.m. It took an hour to walk there. I spent 8 till 9 p.m. with John. And then I walked back home and I'd get home around 10 o'clock. Did that for 12 weeks. And when I finished the 12 weeks, I knew that my life is changed. And he kept saying to me, "Your life's going to change from tomorrow." The last day I was with him. And I said, "No disrespect, John. You've been right about all the things, but I live in this guy's basement. There's no way is my life going to change." And he patted me on the shoulders and said, "Rob, it will change. You've been chosen." And I walked home. I walked differently. I was confident. My head was up. I walked back to my bed at Derek's. The next day, Veronica, Derek come home and he went, "Hey, there's a part-time job opened up at our place, just sweeping floors. Do you want it?" I'm like, "Yes, I want it." That week, that part-time job turned into a full-time job. The week after, one of the guys who just took because I'm a musician, he was a musician. He gave me a mini. This had like 6 months tax and test on it still, so I could use it for 6 months. It wasn't great, but it got me to work. So when I got my first pay packet, I went to the garage, the petrol station, gas station, and I bought him a little teddy bear like this because he changed my life so much. Because everything he said was true. If God's told you go ahead, God's going to take you to America, God's going to crazy stuff he was talking, but I knew he'd saved my life. So bought a little teddy bear, that's all I could afford, a tiny one, and a card. And I wrote on the card, "Thank you for saving my life and introducing me to God." And I walked back to his apartment. And when I got there, I didn't even notice before whether there were curtains up or blinds, but there was none. So I was knocking at the door and I kept knocking. And the next door neighbor on the right came out and says, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Can you tell me where John's moved to?" And she said, "John? I've been here 3 months. I've been known in that apartment." I said, "Okay, crazy woman." Went to the left-hand side, knocked on this door, and a guy came. And I said, "Can you tell me where John's relocated to?" And he said, "John." I thought, what? Why do people keep saying this? I said, "John, yeah, the guy next door." He said, "Next door's derelict. You can't go in there. It's been like that for a year. You have the wrong address. Stop knocking on the door." So I was I'm sure they got the right address. So the next day I went back to the meeting that I'd met John. And it happens that the same chairman was chairing the meeting. And I said to him, "Do you remember me and John talking?" And she said, "John." Here we go again. I said, "Yes, John. We were over near the coffee machine chatting for about half an hour." And he smiled and someone sniggered and I wanted to kill him for laughing at me. But he said to me, "Rob, you was over near the coffee machine speaking to yourself. We've never found that man. But my teachings today and 90% what John showed me to carry the message and pass on, and 10% psychology. And we have a 97% success rate. It's unheard of. The nearest to us is 5% in the treatment center. And we offer a money back guarantee, never heard of, because it's not my program. It's John's program and it's God's program. That's what people don't get their head around. And I've only started sharing that over the last 12 months because I was scared people might think I was crazy.
That's pretty freaking whoa.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's pretty. So you, I don't even know how you explain that.
You know, I've tossed and turned over this. I've had sleepless nights over it. The stuff he taught me was groundbreaking. I knew about neuroplasticity back 25 years ago. Only 10 years ago did the medical fraternity find it. I knew how to save people's lives. I knew all this stuff that people didn't know. I could quote from that big book and people thought it was a joke. And when they looked it up, it was there. It was like I'd been given this superpower. What I realize now is I was empowered and that John was an angel. And I can't put any, I don't argue with anybody. If you don't think it is, that's fine. If you do, it's fine. But it's the only explanation I can come up with because of the knowledge that he passed on to me.
I mean, I thought it was pretty remarkable. I mean, the guy with the Bible, I mean, that's very Christian.
Yes.
That is what the Good Samaritan does, is finds the man who's hopeless on the side of the street and takes him into her. But no, I don't think many people actually do that. I'm going to be honest, I wouldn't take someone who was homeless on the streets back to my house.
Me neither. No.
Wow, I'm going to have to go away and think about that. That's pretty amazing. Okay, so that's when you got sober?
Yes. That's when I got sober.
And then you, what happened? Like, did you get your family back? You
No.
went and did a PhD?
Yeah, I had my PhD and everything, so I decided to open a little practice in Manchester. Probably seen one or two pro bonos, never earned money off it. And then
So you already had your PhD as a...
I did. Yeah.
Right.
I graduated in 1984. This was about 86. So I opened a little practice. I'd see people. It was like a little room in an office. It was someone else's office, but it was, I started to work with people. And I started going back to AA and I started to work with people there. And people were getting well. And then I carried on working like that. And I took some part-time work looking for locations for telecom sites because that's what we used to do. And I made a living doing that and then did that for I don't know how long, quite a long time. And then I was on the internet and it was early days of the internet, but I contacted this lady who was something big in a church in Plano, Dallas. And eventually she found out what I did and I told her my story. She was very religious. I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. But they asked me to go over there for 2 weeks and talk to their youth ministry because there was a big crack cocaine deal happening in a really affluent area in Plano. So that's what I did. I came over. But before that, Veronica, 3 or 4 days before it, I started packing a week before. And then somewhere between 7 and 5 days, maybe 4, I don't know. I got my passport out and it was expired. It's expired by about a week. So I didn't want to call him and tell him that. So I got the bus down to Liverpool and I went in and 2 things happened. First of all, I put all my stuff across and he said, "Hey, you haven't done this. You have to get this signed by someone you know." I said, "I've traveled here on the bus. I can't, I don't know what to do. I'm supposed to go to America." And the guy on my life, the guy slid the passport towards him. He signed it and then he slid it back to him and he stamped it. And he said, "Okay, your passport will be with you in 12 weeks. I said, 12 weeks? 12 weeks is not, I need to expedite it. He went, "No problems. It's another £40 and it'll be with you in 3 to 4 weeks. I said, 3 to 4 weeks? So I didn't expedite it and I went back home and I was going to call him the day before. So I think I flew on a Monday. I don't know. No, I think I flew on a Friday and it was like the Tuesday or Wednesday. That was, should I call him? Should I call him? I thought, no, I'm going to wait until the night before I'm going to call him. And the day before, Veronica, the postman knocked at my apartment and it was upstairs. You had to get through the bottom door, which no one called through the bottom door. That's what I heard. I thought, that's one of my neighbors. I opened the door. He gave me a package and that was my passport. How did the passport come within 5 days? How does it, I mean, all crazy stuff like that was happening to me all the time. I came here for 2 weeks. That was back 15 years ago, and I've never been home. Not to live, but to visit.
And is that where you met your wife?
Uh,
Your second wife?
that second wife, yes, that's where she was the girl that picked me up from the airport that took me to the church. Then I stayed at her house. She became my second wife. But that really didn't work out. It was more of a really strong friendship, and we both knew it. So we amicably separated. After starting the business, Robb Kelly Recovery Group, that was now taking a couple of $1 million a year with just me and 4 other people. I walked out of that marriage with nothing, Veronica. I left her the ranch. I left her about $500,000 in cash money. And I walked out with $500, I think. Then I moved back into a friend of mine owned like a DOS house, like, and I asked him to stay there because I had no friends. All my friends were her friends. So I moved in there, and it was the best time of my life. Mixing with them guys again that I should be mixing with, the guys from the streets, the guys in lower income housing. And I stayed there for about 2 months, got a job, just a normal job, met my wife, and then we started the practice again. And here I am.
Can I ask, what about your kids? What's your relationship like with your kids?
So my youngest daughter, Abigail, refuses to acknowledge she has a father. She hates me. So does my ex-wife, and rightly so. My youngest daughter, my eldest daughter, Charlie, the one I held, and they took him off me and hold mommy's hands. 2 years ago, 2 years ago, in the middle of the night, bing, was a message on Messenger. I opened it. I could blurry. I could look at it and I was like, what does that say? And I put my glasses on. And it was Charlie. He says, hey, Dad. And just to hear Dad again, Veronica, brought tears to my eye. And I woke my wife up and I said, look, it's a message from Charlie. He says something like, I've got it framed on the wall. She said, hey, Dad, I want to see you. I've got some good news for you. I don't believe what Mum tells me. So we flew over on the red eye, and we were actually stood in front of her house at around 17 hours later than the message came over. And because I had stood at her house, or she's waiting for me outside the airport. I can't remember. Anyway, we met, we hugged, we cried. It was such an intense, stressful time before we met. And then she led me into a living room, and she handed me my 3-month-old granddaughter.
Oh.
And then she said, I want to do what you do, Dad. I've seen how you save lives. So we sent her back to school to do a 1 or 2 year course on NLP, neuro linguistic programming. And as of probably a week ago, she opened my Manchester office as my lead therapist.
Tell me your philosophy of addiction. So you, in this spiritual encounter you had, which is no other way to describe it, was it the Big Book of AA you were studying?
Yes.
Can you give us in a nutshell your take on addiction and sobriety?
Okay, so let's call it addiction. Addiction is a mindset that will kill you, self-sabotaging neural pathways. The brain and the hypothalamus and the basal ganglia are warped and dysfunction. So the only way around that is to have a spiritual awakening and what's called a psychic change. And you get that spiritual connection. Again, our research has shown when we have a spiritual awakening, psychic change, which is neuroplasticity, changing our pathways, our DNA changes. Once our DNA changes, there's no turning back. You are a different person. You have the connection with your higher power, universe, Uncle Bob, whatever it is. And then you set about helping others. As long as you're helping others, you will never get drunk. As long as you're helping others and stay in gratitude. So I have a few daily routines that I do to keep me there. So everybody can recover from addiction, period. I don't know what, unless you've got brain damage. There's not one person. 7,000, over 7,000 patients now I've worked with, all recovered. That's why we offer a money back guarantee. It's unheard of. We do it, because you can recover from this stuff that we're going through.
So you're saying that the old-fashioned language of the Big Book of AA, the spiritual awakening, it's just neuroplasticity, but they just didn't have the words for that back then.
Psychic change is neuroplasticity. Yeah, when we can change the way we think. A change of mind, psychic change, psychic of the mind, not psychic of the crystal ball change, psychic change. So change of mind that can happen.
Yeah.
And that spiritual connection that we need to have. So then if we go into quantum physics and then we go back to the spiritual side, there is a connection. And the connection is once you get that spiritual Because alcohol's got 1% to do with alcoholism, and the same with drug addiction. It's not, it's the
Yeah.
illness, it's the symptom. You know, once you get that connection, you are capable of doing absolutely anything you want to do. And what I used to get a couple of years ago was, well, I can never be president of the United States. My answer today is, we had a business and run the country. Don't tell me you can't do anything. If you can see it here, you can hold it here. Quantum physics tells us that. So then you're capable of becoming anybody you want and achieving anything you want. The only person that's stopping you is you.
How do people get that connection with a higher power?
I got mine in a 12-step room. There's no doubt about that. But if you're a church guy, that's what you need to do. Get that connection, pray to God. Yeah, praying and meditation. Meditation is listening, praying is talking. That's all you got to do. And try and get that connection. Get somebody to help you do that, because you very rarely can you do it on your own. The definition of insanity within the addiction world is not doing the same thing over and over again. That's not correct. In the addiction world, the definition of sanity is not being able to see our own truth. When I was on the streets, struggling, dying, I thought there was nothing wrong with me. I thought it was everybody else. So we have to get that connection. And once we do, like, get to that meeting, try it out. Get to that church, try it out. Go into treatment, try it out. But I have never, never, never seen a real alcoholic sober who was an atheist. I just have not seen it. There maybe exist, I don't know. But you have to have that superpower to get you there. There's something you have to believe in.
That's really interesting, because my co-host, Chip, is sober 36 years and he's a card-carrying atheist. But one of the most spiritual people I know. It's atheism about all constructed religion, I think.
There's a really fine line between heavy drinking and abusing alcohol and alcohol. If you have nobody in your lineage going back that's suffered with alcoholism, you're probably not. You probably abuse alcohol or heavy drinker. And if someone gives you a good reason that the wife's going to leave you, you're probably going to stop or cut back. Alcoholics can't do that. When alcoholic takes the first drink, can he stop? If the answer is yes, sometimes I can go home and leave it a week. You are not an alcoholic. And if you do fall into my category, you probably are. But again, alcoholism is the only self-diagnosed illness in the world. 10 DUIs do not make you alcoholic. But there are, if I'm going to say this bold statement, and I'm going to get backfire for this because I'm mentioning AA. But in all the rooms I've traveled around the world, in all the speaking engagements, and of all the meetings I've been to, I would say at any one time, in any meeting, anywhere in the world, 90% of people in that room are not real alcoholics. They've been sent by the judge, they've been sent by the wife, they think they have a drinking problem, it becomes a social club, it's a self-help group. Alcoholics Anonymous is not a self-help group, period. But we get mixed up and we don't know. And everyone goes and they send sex offenders there straight from court. They send, it's just crazy. Everyone sends everybody to these 12-step meetings. And what happened to the real AA is it buckled under the weight.
I would agree with a lot. I would agree with that. I think that for too long, it was the one-stop shop, and everybody who had a whiff of not managing alcohol was sent there.
Yep.
And because of that, the program got very diluted.
Correct.
Because what happened is, full of people-pleasing people, accommodated people who came and said, I'm not doing that, I don't agree with that. And then we diluted the core spiritual aspects of the program, which is ancient spiritual wisdom. It's not original. It wasn't original to Dr. Bob and Bill W. It's ancient spiritual wisdom. And so we've needed other modalities and methods for other people, because it's just not appropriate for a lot of people. I would agree with a lot of that.
But what I want to say, Veronica, and put this out there as a disclaimer, is whatever gets you sober gets you sober. And that's brilliant.
Yes.
Got to do it. There's ways to do it,
Yeah.
It's just,
yeah.
There is, if he goes to church, if he's taking a bath, if whatever it is, if it keeps you sober and you're happy, bless you, man. I wish I could have done that. I couldn't. But if you can do it, great. Go for it. Don't be pressured to go nowhere. If your church gives you enough that you don't drink, beautiful. Pass it on to somebody else in that church.
Yeah, I completely agree with that as well. It's whatever, different strokes for different folks, and what works for you is phenomenal. So what's your program look like? What do you do on a regular daily basis that
Well,
keeps
we
your
change
sobriety?
mindsets. We remap brains. We neuroplasticity, neurolinguistic programming, psychology, and brain spotting is what we use. So
What's brain spotting?
brain spotting is a new technique, probably out about 2 years, and basically in layman's terms, you are going through the pupil in the eye straight to the subconscious brain, and you are finding with I have this monitoring stick with a red thing that you follow. And when the eye flickers, there's a memory from the back that even they don't know. And it's about pulling that memory out. So you're actually delving into the subconscious mind. So, and then my psychotherapists, what they do is they use the ACA, adult child of alcoholic, and they go back and they clear all the trauma. Every alcoholic has trauma. Every normal person has
Mm-hmm.
trauma. Then we have to
Mm-hmm.
identify what trauma is. Anything less than nurturing as a child is child abuse. That causes trauma. Now, if you're an alcoholic or addict, you've had it. And here was my trauma. How many times have I told you, Robert, you can't go to college like your brother? You're too stupid. That was my mother.
Mm-hmm.
God bless her.
Mm,
And that affects, it
mm,
still affects me today. The trauma that we
mm,
pick up as a child, we reproduce when we're older. There's always a correlation between the woman that comes to me and said, how come I keep attracting that nice guy that turned into a drunk that turns out to beat me? What was your parents? Well, it's like, yes, learned behavior. Learned behavior. That there was an experiment that we did as well, but it was done before us. Put 1,000 fleas into a jar, a jam jar, and a big mason jar.
mm,
And then we put the cap on and we left the cap on for 3 days. Then we took the cap off. As we know, fleas can jump 3 or 4 feet. No flea out of the 1,000 went above where the cap was. But what's more interesting is when they had the babies and reproduced, the babies would jump higher than where the cap was. It's learned behavior from
mm,
childhood. We will reproduce in our later life. And unless you match the truth, you will always suffer from trauma. And that trauma as an alcoholic will kill you. So only the
mhm,
last 5 years we've been looking at trauma. People ask me all the time, Veronica, what's the gateway drug? Trauma is the gateway drug. End of story.
mhm.
We only know bits
Yeah.
and bobs. We've studied it crazily for the last 10 years. We know a lot more than other people. But trauma's the killer. Trauma will get you every single time. Trauma's the kind of stuff where my beautiful wife, Janet, was with her brother 2 years before I met her. They're having a party. He's an alcoholic. He never addressed his trauma. They're all at parents' house. He's got 2 kids and a wife. He hugged Janet, my wife, and said, "Hey, I'll see you tomorrow. We're going to down the river walk, and we're going to float on the river." He walked home. He got out of his car. And you could see him on cameras. He walked straight into his garage. He took a gun out and he shot himself in the head. That's
Mm.
trauma.
So quickly, how do you find the addiction treatment industry here in the UK? What's your kind of take on that, and how do you fit on it, and how are you received?
Well, first
Because
of all,
I mean, I've worked in the treatment industry in the UK and now online in the USA, and there's big differences, and I'm interested in your perception.
a treatment centers don't like me and I don't like them. We don't work
Why is that?
center because they don't work. When they're taking little Johnny in for his fourth or fifth treatment, paying $30,000 a time, and it's his third and fourth back to the same place, then what are you teaching them? What you doing? Oh, he wasn't ready. Why did you take his 30 grand when he wasn't ready? Why did you do that? There's a bunch of charlatans out there. Treatment centers do not work. Now, not all treatment centers. I know hundreds of thousands that are mind blowing, amazing, that are brilliant and do the right thing. But there's a lot of treatment centers, millions around the world that take the money, don't teach you anything. They teach you relapse prevention. And one of the biggest sayings in treatment centers, you got 15 people in the room. Oh, this time next month, 13 of you would have relapsed. Okay, so you're giving permission for me to relapse. Okay, I'll go and do that.
Mm,
It's like, no, there's no money in recovery. There's money in pretend recovery because if you get a patient back third and fourth time, he's staying for 3 months at 30 grand a month. That's almost 100 grand you're taking off that patient. If he returns, good. It's awesome. So I don't like them. They don't like me. And I love that. We'll only do business with the good ones. And if you're a good one, you can see your percentage is pretty high. The normal percentage in the other guys is 3%. 12-step rooms are 4%. So
mm,
where does our 97% come from? because we care and we put our money where our mouth is, and we teach you neuroscience, and we teach you behavior patterns, and we clear the trauma up that's stuck in the subconscious brain that keeps killing you every single day. That's what we do. It's a done deal. But
Mm.
at what cost? Cost of losing my youngest child, the cost of never seeing my wife ever again, the cost of losing friends and family that still don't speak to me today. Feel like it's all right for you. Right? No, it's not all right for me. I've paid a price for the information I know. And I think everybody else does. Like if I see someone driving back down in a Rolls Royce, and my friend go, "Oh my God, I'd love to be in." And I go, "You don't know what price he's paid for that car." Well, it's 120 grand. You don't know what price he has paid.
Mm.
Everything we have, we pay a price for. That John told me,
Mm.
"Rob, you can have anything you want in the world, like literally anything, as long as you're willing to pay the price for it." And I don't think he
Mm.
meant monetary. I've paid a heavy price to be where I am. I have my haters out there who don't believe in our program, don't believe I'm English, don't believe I went to college, don't believe I'm a musician. They come up with all sorts of crap. But I don't care. I've paid my price to be here. I'm adamant, I'm passionate, I'm caring. You know, there's one or two of my guys relapsed. I'm the guy that stays awake for 2 days crying because that happened. My wife literally
Mm.
has to coax me out of bed like a baby because I take that stuff personally. Because my mum died earlier than she should with cancer, and it was brought on heavy by my homelessness. She told me some days
Mm.
when she heard a police car go past, she was hoping they'd knock on the door and tell her I was dead, just so she could relax. I don't want anybody else to suffer that, Veronica. I don't want anybody else to
Mm.
lose the kids. If I can help in any way, then I'm
Mm.
going to do it. And also, the biggest thing we do, we work with the families while working with the patient. So
Mm.
anybody in the house, so it's the wife, and say that the daughter's 19, anybody over 18, we work with them. When we do that and involve them too, 2 days a week, the patient does 7 days a week for an hour a day telehealth, the chances of his
Mm.
recovery go up by 42%. That's
Mm.
also our key. You can't take somebody out of, let's say, a Japanese speaking house and take him out and put him in treatment where they speak German. And then 3 months later, take him out and stick him back in to the Japanese speaking. He's
Mm.
going to start speaking Japanese again. You have to work with both parties. So it's a
Mm.
recovery for the family. It's a family disease.
Wow, this has been. I'm going to be thinking about this. This is. I like a lot of the stuff you say. I that yeah. It's a spiritual solution, and the roots are in trauma and all of that. Where and any. I mean, what would you say to someone who's really struggling right now?
Two things. First of all, if you're sat at home and you don't think you've got enough, you don't think you amount to anything, and you don't think your life's going to get any better, I want to apologize to you. Somebody's put that there. If you're struggling at all with anything, start dialogue. Start talking to other people. Don't be embarrassed. If you're alcoholic or an addict, don't be embarrassed. If you're just depressed, don't be embarrassed. Get that stuff out of the closet, guys. There are millions and millions of people. I've worked with some of the biggest names in the record industry, music, film, sports, the biggest names, like the biggest top guy names I've worked with. We need to bring it out. There's no embarrassment in this. And secondly, if you're sat at home listening to this and you're in a place, a dark place, I'm going to give you my cell phone number. I want you to text me, and me and you will have a conversation for 10 minutes. That 10 minutes will change your life. 214 600 0210. That doesn't go through to my assistant. It does not go through to my front desk. It comes directly to this phone. It's a chill pill phone. Okay. And you get to speak to me. And if I can change your life in 10 minutes, it will be my pleasure. Don't sit there thinking, I can't really call him because he's famous. Really? The guy that sold his kids out, the guy that was homeless, stabbed his wife 3 times. Text me. I'd rather have a 10-minute conversation here than hear of your funeral in a couple of days' time. That's for sure.
Wow, we have a lot of listeners, so you might get a lot of
Good,
messages.
good.
Where can people find you apart from that cell phone number?
Any search engine, Dr. Robb Kelly, just stick it in there. We come up all over the place. I spell my name with two B's. So it's ROBBKELLY.com. It's the website. I think everything's on there. You can buy the book there. Last thing my daughter said to me, Daddy, please stop drinking. It's for sale there. It's $9. All of
Mm.
the money, not profits, all of the $9 you spend go back out into the community in England and in the US of A. We gave away back to the community $150,000. That was 10,000 from the book and 140 out of my own pocket to give back to people, one parent families who want to see the kids again, who want to get better, who want that little apartment. We're always giving back. Bless someone every single day. You're doing good.
Well, thank you, Dr. Robb Kelly. It's a pleasure to speak to you and hear your incredible story. Um, I'm sure so many people are going to get so much out of that. I'm glad that we finally connected, and I appreciate you, and I appreciate all the work that you're doing and how passionate you are for to helping people. Because I have the same passion, and I don't want. I just know it's possible to recover,
Yes.
and I believe we recover, and we are recovered also.
Boom.
And yeah, that's a very fundamental part. So yeah,
Thank
thank you so much, everybody. Let me know on social media what you think of this podcast, and I'll be back next week. Take care.